Welcome to Women in the Fore. This is a program that we profile women that are doing extraordinary things and have achieved great things in their life. Today, being a Mother's Day, we have a special edition where our guest is going to be sharing how her mother influenced her life. Here with me is Rina Kamaliza, and I'll ask my guest to introduce herself so that we get to know her more. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Rina.
Introduce yourself.
I am Tamanda Longwe. We're currently working for NBS Bank, leading teams in marketing and customer experience. Yeah.
How was it like growing up? Would you envision yourself leading such a team?
I would say yes, because for me, growing up I had a very full childhood, and I had a mother and a father who always insisted that we are the best. I only have one sister in my family, but we were always treated the same as the boys. I'm third born of 5. 3 are boys, and there's only me and my sister as girls. But even though we're girls, the expectation was always as high as for the boys. So I knew that my parents weren't expecting anything less for us just because we were female. So the the bar has always been set very high for us. So yes, the envisionment was there.
Would you give us a background where you went to school, or what got you to study anything that would be relating to marketing and customer relations?
Okay, my school started off with Mount View. That's where I did my primary school. And then I eventually went to Kamu's Academy for my high school. And then finally to the Polytechnic for my bachelor's in business administration. After that, I did a postgraduate professional diploma in marketing with CIM. Why did I choose business administration as my degree? Well, interestingly, I initially wanted to be a lawyer.
Then you should have gone to Chancellor College.
Yeah, ideally, yes. But during the gap year between finishing my high school and going to university, I worked for a law firm. And then I realized that maybe law is not exactly for me.
After you saw the experience.
Yes. But when I had a chat with my sister, she's older than me. She was actually pursuing her bachelor's in business administration at the time. And when I knew what the degree was about, I was a lot more interested in business administration than I was in law. So I eventually changed my options, and lucky enough, I was selected for the degree.
Oh, wow. So what sort of influence did your mother have in making these choices? I know you spoke to your sister, but then your mother has been there ever since you were born. What sort of influence did she have on your life?
My mother, I would say she had a very big influence. She was a lecturer by profession. But even though she was a lecturer and an educator by profession, I didn't follow her profession, but she was always very encouraging in terms of finishing your school and making sure that you're getting good grades. I'll actually give an example of how I actually learned how to study or manage my time was because of my mom. In primary school, she would actually write tests for me in every subject. Wow. So I would study and she would actually give me tests. So I think through that, I learned how to manage my time, how to study, how to make sure that I'm actually on top of my studies because of her. So I think that's a big influence from the time I was in primary school all the way up until today.
She was a professional woman.
She was a professional woman.
And did you feel any gap between her being a professional woman and being the mother at home?
I would say no. The good thing about the profession she was in, it's that it's very flexible. So how she manages her time is actually very flexible because she's not in class. She's either maybe marking or she's got time to come to school and support and so on and so forth. But what I would say is she had a very good balance in terms of her profession and taking care of us as kids. So you'd come home and you'd still find her insisting, where is your homework? Can I see it? What are you doing in school? What did you do today? So she was very involved. She wasn't distant just because she was a professional. She was actually very involved in our lives, yes.
But through all this that you've explained, maybe were there any challenges that you faced and you feel like, okay, if it wasn't for my mother being here, I wouldn't have gone through this?
Yes, I'll go back to the example that I've given in terms of her influence, in terms of if I had to study, I'd get a test and so on. I was a very temperamental, very So, you know, her childhood hyperactive is very hard to sit down
Yes,
to
and
concentrate and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Attention span is very short. So I think she helped me channel that temperament and the emotional side of me to the woman I am today. If described myself as emotional, I think very few people would relate to it. But I think it's from her influence, really. Yeah.
When you got to college, you know, being a young lady, being in college, what are some of the challenges you faced there that maybe some girls or some younger ladies might feel that maybe because of this I might not go through college, or I just want to quit and maybe go and do something else?
Well, college is really about balance. So as a woman, I generally think women balance their lives better than men, because growing up, we're actually helping to balance the home. We still have to study. So I think we grow up learning about balance a lot more than the boy child. So I think what is important is that when you go to college, you don't, as much as you have the freedom to be yourself because you don't have anybody monitoring you, but at the same time, it's actually very important to use the balance that you've grown up with throughout your life to manage your time in college. College is not easy. You can be thrown out of college if you don't perform. So as much as you have the freedom to do or be who you want to be, it's actually very important to balance between your social life as well as your studies. Yes.
You getting to this after your bachelor's, you now went to do a certificate in marketing.
Oh, postgraduate diploma.
Postgraduate diploma in marketing. What influenced you focus to go into marketing as part of your postgraduate studies?
Two things. My mom would always call me talkative. She would, in her words, chatterbox. So she'd always say you should be in a profession where you're allowed to express yourself. So as much as I'm not as talkative as I used to be as a child, but I think marketing is a profession that allows you to express yourself, your creative side. Doesn't cage you in. So finance, you have specific rules that you have to follow. I think I wouldn't thrive in that profession, whereas marketing allows you to thrive. It brings out your personality even in the work that you do. So my mom always encouraged me in that sense that you need a profession that can allow you to express yourself. Yes.
Growing up in Malawi myself, and as many of our viewers, we've seen that for a girl to be a chatterbox, as you've put it, sometimes it's seen as against the norm. You know, you need to be quiet, very calm, very attentive, but you've gone out of your way and still did a profession that allows you to be more of what you've always been. You know, what would you tell other mothers that have daughters that are like that and they feel like, no, your personality, maybe you need to calm down and not do this and not do that?
I think what I would say to other mothers is it's important to allow your child to have confidence in who they are as a person, for starters. So how you channel, like I mentioned earlier, how my mother channeled my energy is what actually made me who I am today. So you will have those girl children who are very temperamental and very active and so on. So how you channel it, not from a negative perspective, but encourage them to be who they are, but show them what is wrong and what is right, what is acceptable, so that they also have an emotional intelligence, what I would call emotional intelligence. So you train them when to say what, when to behave in a certain way, when to be quiet, when to express themselves. I think it's basically the training that they go throughout the child, but not to stop them from being who they are.
One thing also that struck me was that you spoke about how in your home you had a balance between what the boys did and what the girls did. It was all a leveled platform for everyone. What would you tell mothers that have both boys and girls, but maybe there's, in a way, trying to segregate these duties that no, boys can do this, girls can do that? What would be your word to them, taking from the experience that on what your parents did, especially your mother?
To be honest, I know that in our culture as Malawians, it will never be a 50-50 scenario in the home. But I think it's also important to teach the boy child that for them, it's not just go to school, come home and throw everything around and someone also pick up on their behalf, because telling them that to be responsible for themselves also builds character. It gives them a sense of responsibility. So if you finish your food, at least leave your plate in the kitchen. look after yourself in your bedroom, lay your own bed, pick up after yourself, make sure whatever is dirty is thrown in the right place, pick up your own laundry, put it in your cupboards, and so on and so forth. I think those basics actually help to build the character of a boy child, not to expect that everyone will just wait on them hand and foot, but also to have a certain sense of responsibility for their own lives. So I would say, as much as they won't do everything that the girl child does in a home, but they should do a certain level that actually cleans up after themselves as children. Yes.
Getting to the professional side, when you started work, was there anything that really struck you off just for being a lady and being in this professional environment that made you feel like more of inferior, or that you wouldn't survive in such an environment?
I would say, as Malawi, we've come a long way. From the time I've been working for over 13 years now. From the time that I started working, I would say the gap was much bigger than it is today. It was a challenge because I think I always felt that I had to do twice as much as my male counterparts in order to stand out or to be taken more seriously. But I'm seeing the change as time goes by. For example, at NBS Bank, out of 112 managers that we have, junior all the way up to executive management, 40 of them are female. So for me, that's a big percentage, and also shows the direction that Malawi is taking in terms of taking females more serious in the professional setup. And actually, in executive management of 5, we actually have one. Our CFO is actually female, which is something that is not common to have a chief finance officer who is female. So I would say that path has been opened, and it's getting easier for women in the professional setup. Yes.
You said you had to do twice as much. How was it like coping with that?
I think I've always been a go-getter because of the way I've been brought up, like I mentioned. So for me, it was more of a challenge. If I have to prove myself and do twice as much, I'll do it, plus more. So I've always wanted to be the best at what I do. I've always wanted to achieve the most out of whatever I've been given as a challenge. So I think I took it on more as a challenge. And being young, single, I had all the time to actually pour in all my efforts. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, well, we are talking to Tamanda Longwe. She's the customer experience manager at NBS Bank, where she's risen through the ranks, and of course 13 years of experience is no mean achievement. Well, stay with us as we continue our chat with Tamanda. Well, we're talking to Tamanda Longwe. She's the Marketing and Customer Experience Manager at NBS Bank. This is Women in the Fore. With me, Ezelina Kamaliza. Continuing with our program, Tamanda, yes. What are some of the lessons you'd pick out from your mother, the way she raised you, the way she gave you guidance on various things? What are some of the things that you still, like, on a daily basis, like, this is what I remember from my mom?
I think one of the major thing that I remember about my mom is her kindness. Growing up, she always showed kindness to different people, whether relatives or not. In her profession itself, she always exuded a certain care and kindness and a motherliness to everyone, regardless of whether it was blood related or not. So that was a big influence on me, and I think the type of manager that I am today is attributed to her. The type of woman that I am today is attributed to that. That was also influenced by her Christianity. She was a Christian, and she loved fellowship. She loved to be involved in anything to do with the church and anything to do with church activities. So she also influenced me a lot in that sense. Her love for Christ, her love for church, her love for her fellow brethren has a big influence on my life. But as I also mentioned, education was also top for her. So that was always number one as well for her. And finally, I would say she was very organized. My mother was very organized. I would call her a borderline perfectionist. And she transferred that to me as well, because I always want things planned out nicely. Things should be orderly. Things should happen in an orderly fashion. Lists and writing things down.
You know what you're supposed to do at a particular time.
What do I need to achieve this? What do I need to achieve that? How much time do I need? So she passed that on to me as well. Yeah.
In the world that we're living in, we have so many professional women that are mothers, and sometimes it's quite hard to strike that balance between the work and them raising their children. From your mother's experience, what are some of the things you tell such mothers living in the new age, that you can't live away from your work, but also you need your children to be taken care of?
Okay, I think maybe I should answer that in two parts. At the beginning of a profession, the demands are not as high as when you go up in the corporate ranks. So what I would say to mothers in the beginning of their profession is, if you have a mother at that age when you're young, use it as much as possible to nurture your kids, and also to make sure that they have the right personality, the right characteristics, and the right values at that age. As you get higher, for mothers that are becoming mothers in the time when the profession is busier, I would say, and you're managing teams, I would say you really need to learn how to delegate, and also to make sure that you use your team to the best of your ability, because if you do everything yourself, you will never have time to strike a balance between your professional life and your home life. So what I would say is, it's really about striking a balance and finding a balance that works for you, but never to overemphasize one side of your life over the other, because no one will raise your children for you.
Okay, you've mentioned of how kindness and you being organized also plays a part in your work, not just at home, but in your work as well. How important is it that these sort of values should sink in the children as they grow up, that they're able to use them even in their professional life? What would go wrong if they are not really aligned to such values?
What would go wrong? Everything, really, because it means you always be out of balance. So it's either you're focusing too much on one area and not another. So one is suffering and one is gaining the best of you. But in terms of time management, from a young age, we always had set times. Everybody's up by 5. We were always to know it's my brother that normally showers first, then me, and finally my older sister. She was always the last to get ready. But we always knew that there was a pattern, and we knew that by 6:30 everybody's leaving the house. So those type of things, that there's no compromise in terms of what time you leave the house. I remember there's a time that I was actually left behind. I didn't go to school because I was late. So that's also a lesson. It's a way of teaching someone that not everybody will wait for you. If you know what time you're supposed to be ready, be ready. They're simple things, but they actually instill a certain level of values, that you value other people's time. You're not always late for things. You're not always late for meetings. So when those things are instilled from a very young age, that if church starts at 8, everybody should be ready by 7:30. We're driving to church. We're there earlier and seated by 8. All those things were things that were instilled in us as children, and you take that along with you everywhere you go. So you're never late for class, you're never late for a meeting, and so on. Yeah.
Getting to the position that you're leading teams, how important is it to build support systems, I would call them, within your teams, that you can delegate, leave a certain amount of work with? How does it build you as well in your role?
I think you learn a lot when you start to lead teams. Obviously, your upbringing, your character, and how you've grown up contributes to how you actually lead the team. But I think you also learn a lot from the actual team itself, because you have such a varied range of personalities or the way people do things, the way people understand, the level of understanding. So you also learn a certain amount of patience, which is also important for mothers. So you learn how to mother in a professional setup. So everyone has their role, but you also need to be patient, to coach, to teach, because the only way that you can delegate is if they know what they're doing. So that's a role you also play, to nurture someone else in the organization in order to carry out certain functions that you would normally carry out yourself, but you can actually delegate to someone else.
How can a young lady watching this program prepare for themselves when they get to that position? Maybe they're just starting out in their career, or they're still in college, even in high school. How can they prepare themselves for challenges where they've been put in that leadership position, no matter how small, but they're getting some sort of resistance from certain members of the team or certain people that they're supposed to work with? How do you deal with some resistance from your workmates, for example?
I think it's important to develop relationships as a start, but also to be very assertive. It's natural, even to this day, that we're making headway in terms of Malawi and professional women, that people expect women to be softer. So they expect women to give more leeway, to accept more. If someone is being mediocre, maybe not to be tough on them and so on. But what I would say to anyone who's going to lead a team, no matter how small, is you have to be assertive as a woman. So you have to have your principles and you stick by them. At the same time, avoid being confrontational, because something said in a confrontation by a man will not always be taken the same way said by a woman. By a woman, it seems more emotional, because naturally we're more emotional. So you really need to learn how to manage yourself. One of the most important things to do is to have a mentor. If you have a mentor, it's someone that you can actually mimic, someone that you can watch and learn from in terms of how they carry themselves, how they manage other people. In terms of overcoming resistance, for me, in my experience, what I've learned is engagement is important. Instead of fighting battles in your corners, sit down and discuss how best you can move forward. You have a conflict in front of you. What is your expectation? What is the other person's expectation? How can you work together? How can you come to the middle and actually move forward? I think engagement is very important in those cases.
Looking back from where you've come from in terms of progress of women, whether in your field or in the country in general, of the things that maybe we could do better?
I think as women, we need to get rid of excuses. From managing, my experience from managing teams, what I tend to find is when you're not as a woman, when you're not in a place of responsibility, you tend to relax and think that having an excuse. Use vernacular language. Mwana wa dwara, amunanga dwara, maya dwara. So in all those cases, you're absent. But I think we need to strike a balance to say, okay, how big is the sickness? Is it just a flu? Maybe I can just ask to knock off early, for example, to check.
Go and do something.
Yes, and go do something and then knock off early just to come back and check on the child. Or is it something that I can assign maybe a niece, a nephew, a sister to assist me with? Do I go to every funeral in my neighborhood, or do I just go there in the evening and then ask for half a day off for the actual burial? So all those things you find in a community where women are expected to do so much more than men, that you'd really need to be striking a balance, and you really need to manage yourself in an organization. Aside from that, like I said, those excuses or those types of behaviors are what then hinders women from being taken seriously. Yeah.
You in your explanation, you've also mentioned of some sort of having a support system at home.
Yes.
How does that also help you grow professionally?
I think it's very important to have a support system at home, because I'll give examples how there are times when my sister travels, for example, but she still has children to pick up from school, and maybe her husband is not available on that day. She will send me. So I will take 30 minutes off my time to say, I just need to pick up my nephews and drop them off. So I'll pick them up and drop them off. 30 minutes of my time. But she has that support system. And it's not an everyday thing, but it's something that I can do on her behalf. So just as an example, that could be it. Then in some cases where I'm not available for a family event, a family function, but she is. So she'll represent me maybe with my brothers or my dad. So all those things actually help because it means that you're not everywhere. You're not expected to be everywhere, you know? Yeah.
You have people to do something.
You have people to do some things on your behalf, yes, yes.
As we close the program, what word would you have to women who are trying to find that balance? We have a home to take care of. I'm trying to grow professionally, or maybe trying to do some studies on the side as well. What would you tell them? This is your camera.
What I would say is every situation is different. What I've described here is my experience and my situation, but for every woman, the circumstances may not be the same. So the key in striking a balance is to look at your personal situation, not necessarily compare it to someone else. You can learn from others, but look at your own situation and find that balance in terms of how you can manage your own life and your own family and your own profession in order to have a balance between all of those: society, career, and family.
Well, Tamanda, thank you so much for coming to the program.
Thank you very much, Iselina.
That's how we've had it. We were talking to Tamanda Longwe. She's the Marketing and Customer Experience Manager at NBS Bank. I hope we've picked a thing or two. She's shared her experience growing professionally and also how much her mother had an influence over her life. You've been with me, Iselina Kamaliza. Stay tuned as we continue our programming here on Times Television.
Food to my soul.